So hi everyone, welcome to the monthly Leadership Forum Community Incubating Leadership Conversation, or I should say a conscious leadership conversation this month. The Leadership Forum Community is a nonprofit 501c3 that has a long history, over 100 years, of providing a space for leaders to convene, to explore leadership challenges, develop conscious leaders, and create solutions that result in meaningful and equitable change in organizations, education, and society. Part of that of what we offer is programming. Part of what we offer in our programming is monthly incubating leadership conversations, also known as ILCs. Today we have a kind of special one called a CLC, which stands for Conscious Leadership Conversation. And these learning/development conversations serve to be as a safe space for leaders to convene together around a topic. Typically, we have provocateurs share insights, tools, or perspectives around a topic they're passionate about in an engaging way that facilitates conversation and learning. But today we'll be focusing, kind of coming around leadership labs, which came out of our previous summit that happened about a month or two ago now, back in July. So this will be definitely a good one to be engaged with and have really great dialogue and kind of get engaged and join into some cool labs throughout the rest of this year with the community. So feel free to please direct message me your email address, and I'll be partially your host, Faith as well, or Poe, to be included in future Leadership Forum communications. And just keep in mind of the mute button, although that we want this to be a very informal and insightful dialogue. Want to be mindful of other speakers and whatnot throughout the session. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Faith as we begin our CLC for today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Matthew. Just a sound check. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. So goals for today, we're just going to do a quick engagement with the community. We're going to explore and select leadership challenges. So if you have already selected one, thank you so much. If you haven't, you will still have an opportunity to select a leadership challenge to dive into. We're going to talk about lab commitment, about leading a lab, some of the process, and then next steps. So first, what is your power word? So like Matthew said, we had a summit back in July, and one of our final activities was collecting everybody's power word, and we created this word bubble out of it. So out of that summit, people were inspired. They wanted to be the change. They felt empowered. So as we get into this activity and into this workshop, if you could just drop what your power word would be for your hope and intention for getting involved in one of these labs. So feel free to take a minute and drop that in the chat. Okay, we have engaged, excellent, inspired, transformation, awesome, all really great words. So we will continue. So I'll pass it over to Joel quickly to just outline some of the leadership challenges that we're going to be talking about today.
Great. So just as a way to really help people and remind people of some of the topics that came out of the Leadership Forum community, as well as some surveys that we did. These 9 topics are ones that kind of just rose to the surface, and we'll probably end up doing a little bit of a paring down based on people's interest. But we know that, topic number 1, resilience and fatigue and the burnout, the COVID world that we're living through is really quite challenging, thinking about parents, thinking about people that aren't able to leave their house because they're trying to keep themselves and other loved ones, protected. That's an important topic. Women in leadership. Actually, within the Leadership Forum, we are seeing about between 60 and 70% of the participants actually being women. And so we thought this was a really important one to be able to form a little bit of a dialogue group that can explore this and think about how we can support others. But you all will ultimately decide what to focus on through your conversation. Now, the one with unlearning racism and democratizing leadership, those have an asterisk because they were launched last year as leadership labs, and you'll learn a little bit more about how these topics potentially feed into a leadership lab process. But both of those are ongoing groups that are also willing to open up their group and invite people in. So Unlearning Racism is about, how do we think about, anti-racist organizations? How do we think about building inclusive communities in the workforce, in community? Democratizing leadership and education is about, how do we integrate leadership into education so that all students have access to leadership development? Polarities. This comes out of the Leadership Forum as a topic where we talked about polarity mapping, and some connected themes were around dealing with divisions at work and socially, and how a polarity thinking or polarity mapping can actually help you better understand those challenges. If you haven't seen the YouTube channel for the Leadership Forum, you can go and watch that polarities workshop that we had at the Leadership Forum Summit. Building connections across remote locations was a topic that came up. So many people are moving into a distributed workforce, remote working. How do we better understand that, what the challenges are, and how we can support people? Transformations, just like polarities, was at the Leadership Forum Summit, and that's using a tool and a developmental framework that helps people think about how they can transform themselves, transform others, support others. So exploring this framework, both with polarities and transformations, there will likely be access to a tool that can help you, and you can integrate it within your work, whether that's the work world, education, your community. So both of those will have some tools that play into the process for the Leadership Lab this year. Facilitating group dialogue was also named a little bit different. Last year we were talking about having courageous conversations, and out of that lab last year they created an ICU tool. If you want to know more about that tool, that's on the website. But facilitating group dialogue. And Ago Shalom Youth Village is in Ethiopia, and they have done, is it Ethiopia? I just drew a blank, Shiri.
Rwanda.
Rwanda, thank you. I'm like, no, Ethiopia is where somebody else is on the call. Thank you. And in Rwanda, and Shiri will be here to talk a little bit, give context about how they've been working with students there in a school. And they have a tool and a process that they want to think about. How can we bring that to other places, organizations, schools, communities? So that's as quickly as I could have done a little bit of an introduction on these topics. There will be named breakout rooms that you'll be able to select and go into. And if you're having any problems, we'll help you navigate getting in those. But Faith, back to you to talk a little bit about Leadership Labs and how these topics feed into that process.
Thanks, Joel. So what is a leadership lab? So basically a leadership lab is a group of people that are coming together to dive a little bit deeper, either into a leadership topic, a leadership challenge, and to produce some sort of insight or tool or podcast. I'll show you a few of the things that previous groups have created, and Joel has mentioned some as well. And it's also just a great way to expand your network. Like Joel has mentioned, we have some people from the United States, from other countries all around the world here, and the work definitely spans way outside of just America. So it's a great way to expand your networks and just grow in a community. So what are some of the lab logistics? So typically we have a lab leader for each lab. That lab leader would set up the monthly meetings, or however often you decide to have a meeting. They would kind of keep the group moving forward. And so it's a great leadership opportunity if you're looking for a safe place to practice being a leader. Next, time commitment. So when I was a lab leader 2 years ago, we decided as a group that we would meet once a month for 1 hour. And that would be our time to kind of go over everything that we have individually been working on and figure out what our next steps were. So there was some work that had to be done outside of that hour, but it is definitely what you make it, and the commitment that you make to each other really drives what the time commitment will be. Deliverables, like Joel has mentioned, some people create white papers, some people have piloted programs, training programs, a podcast. The sky's the limit. So however you feel you would like to try and solve the problem you're working on, or share the information you're learning, the deliverable is totally up to you. And then lastly, presentations. So we'd love to have at least a few leadership labs come out of this event. And once you have a few months and you've created something, we would invite you to have a presentation with the broader leadership forum community. So you can always keep that in mind. It's low pressure, just sharing what you're learning and as a way to educate the rest of the community. So what have other labs created?
And Faith, just to jump in for a quick second, just to let everyone know, you don't need to commit to a lab either. So you could just be a part of the process today and decide, hey, I'd like to be informed longer term. We do need, people, we need to have enough people in a lab to actually have them work and connect and feel like there's a little bit of a community. But some people might just want to say, I just want to be informed. I want to support this. Include me periodically. And another group of people that's like, I'm all in. I want to be working on this. This is really important to my life and what I want to do, my work. So I just want to be able to share that because we do want to build momentum and flexibility for people.
Definitely. Thanks, Joel. So on our website, we actually have a summary of all of the leadership labs to date. So just so you can see and be able to explore them at a future date. Joel has talked about the democratizing leadership. And so that actually started 2 years ago with the SLOPE leadership framework. So as you can see, some of them will continue, some of them create something, might morph into something else. Courageous community dialogue, which has morphed into facilitating group dialogue, started with an ICU tool. Unlearning Racism has created a charter for the Leadership Forum. So that's an awesome addition, and it's great to have it, and it's great that we're moving the dial forward even within our own community. Leading during COVID, this group interviewed over 100 leaders from several different industries, generations, and geographies to take a look at what it took to lead through 2020. Total Rewards created a podcast called Who's There, exploring the subject of total rewards. And then Democratizing Leadership Exchange, which is continuing on. So just to give you a flavor of what's been done and what's continuing to happen. And, next up, you'll be maybe on this website as well. So let me just go back to sorry, technical issues.
Well, Faith is pulling that up. You can drop questions in chat if you have them too. We'll be breaking out and really getting into the dialogue of this in just a minute, but we just want to share one more step in the process of what it's like to go through and what's the methodology that we really use here. So thanks for everyone's patience as we just set a little context here.
Okay, so in your groups, we're going to use the design think process to start understanding more about the problem. So in your groups, you'll be going through the first 2 steps of empathy and define, and you might get a little bit to ideate. So in empathy, you're just going to ask, what is the problem we're trying to solve for, and who is actually experiencing this problem? Within define, you're going to define what needs to be included within the future solution and what are the desired outcomes. And then if you have time, you can start brainstorming some potential solutions and outcomes. And then if you do decide to stick around and join a leadership lab, you would continue through this process in future meetings. So with that, we're going to let you select which group you'd like to go into. and you'll have a facilitator in each group as well. And if you have any questions, always feel free to ping us in the chat, or you'll have a facilitator there also helping to guide you along in the conversation and set a little more context for each of these.
All right, so I'm jumping in here. I am going to launch these breakout rooms. Now, we're trying something for the first time. So Zoom has improved their system so that you can name them and people can select into the room that they want here. So I'm going to launch these, and you should see the name of the topic out there. If that doesn't work, we will problem solve it. So great, the rooms are open. People back. Welcome everyone. Faith, I've forgotten who goes now, whether that's you or me. I need to stop sharing my screen so you're not looking at the ASYV version of our conversation. But while Faith and I are sorting that out, just in the chat, just put like a sentence about what inspired you about the conversation you just had. What inspired you about the conversation you just had? Great, so I'm seeing out there a number of comments starting to come in. Women from different situations coming together with common challenges, a small impact on myself and other women around me. Folks willing to speak personally and get real. Yeah, Bill, that's always a really good one. Being among people who want to truly make a difference. The collegiality, there's many good ones out here. I'm going to stop reading, but I could read all of these. Keep them coming. Great, Crystal, thank you. Courage of women, courageous discussions. Yes, thank you. This is hopefully all a part of expanding conscious leadership, right? When we hear from others, we can check our own mental models, our own thoughts. Make sure you're muted out there just as well. And hopefully, you know, as we expand our understanding, as we expand our consciousness, hopefully we can be even more intentional about the impact that we want or can create in the world. So that's part of this. Faith, I think I'm going to kick it to you. Was that the right approach, Faith?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Joel.
Great.
So we have a couple of minutes for a report out and or process questions. So for the groups that came together, did you potentially elect somebody as a lab leader that would like to give a quick 1-minute summary of what you talked about and potentially what your next steps are?
I can jump in. This is Lyndon, and we're talking about polarities, and we kind of ran out of time, so we didn't really get to a lab leader or even a designated representative. But you know, I was taking some notes so I can represent our group if that's okay. So we had about 7-ish people, I think, that came together in our group, and people were really able to reference you know, difficult challenges that they were dealing with in the context of their work or their environments, and really intrigued by how this polarity process could be helpful in kind of getting past the impasse. And so what the interest was really around was about learning more about the tool and the practice and how to use it, and then applying it to real world context that they were working in. So where we wound up with, where there was some level of agreement, was spending some time and actually learning more about the tool, and then kind of doing some peer kind of assists with application of the tool for different people's needs. That's where we wound up. And for the folks who were in our group, feel free to jump in if you'd like to add anything.
Thanks so much, Lyndon.
Faith, I'll jump in real quickly on that one because I know we're talking with Polarity Partnerships, Cliff, who presented, and we're exploring a way that we can do a workshop that people can go deeper and start to get into the application. And there might even be a certification, a licensing process. That might need to be a fee-based thing that we need to do just to put it out there. But that would, I think, directly align, Lyndon, with some of what you all were talking about, is going deeper with that and then being able to use tools and support each other on how that can really address some challenges. So sorry to jump in, but I thought I wanted to make that connection.
Great, thanks, Joel. Anybody else brave enough to give a report out on what your group talked about?
I can give a report on the women's group.
Thanks, Ann.
Being seen and heard. So we had 4 people and myself were in the group, and we got Crystal kind of tentatively said she might lead it, but she's going to think about that. And but what we came out with was we had some different challenges from the group, but what it boiled down to a lot was some of the challenges. You look at the root cause is how women and men are socialized, and kind of sets us up to have certain biases, both in terms of what professions we seek to go into, and also in terms of how we relate to each other. So the group decided that it was worth continuing our conversations, and we would invite any women who are on this call to join us. Please let me know, and I will put you in contact with the rest. Or if you have friends that want to join, that's fine too. So, want to explore further how we can expand the role of women, and also how their voices can be heard and they can progress in their careers.
Great. Thanks, Ann. Are there any outstanding questions or concerns that people have, or just anything we didn't answer today?
Faith, I just wanted to say that we had a group on dialogue and basically looking at how can we learn to have a constructive group dialogue. Sue talked a lot about to just listen and feel heard, and learn how to facilitate it like that. So a process that applies universally to many different situations. And Sue and Nancy, I just slaughtered what we agreed to talk about. So please help me and say anything else.
I'll just comment quickly. I don't think he slaughtered it, Bill. I think what we talked about was, going in that direction, and then it just needs to get crystallized a little bit more. But the idea of, equipping yourself in a number of applications, that's the word universally, when it comes to dialogue, and how do you set yourself up with, the mindset and some other tools to have constructive dialogue. That's what we were bouncing around. Sue might want to comment. I don't know.
Well, we're probably running out of time, but that was very good addition. I think it's just something that we may visualize that anyone in this community and elsewhere could utilize to address any project they had, because if you're dealing with people, you're dealing with communicating, and this is just a communication tool that can be universally helpful.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for sharing. Okay, so we already went over what is a leadership lab and some logistics. So next steps, if you didn't see the group leadership lab proposal in the chat, everybody will get it after this meeting, and then maybe in your first scheduled meeting, you can fill that lab proposal out and submit it back to us. And we're just excited to be able to see where these labs go, and what you all create and what you come to share. Look out for more information from the lab coordinator. So, there will be an individual overseeing the entirety of the lab groups, and then you'll each have your own lead as well. So if you didn't pick a lead yet, also think about that in the next couple of days if you'd like to step up and be a leader in your group. And then last but not least, connect with our LinkedIn group. It's called Leadership Forum Community on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions, always feel free to shoot an email to inbox@leadershipforumcommunity.org. And if there's anything else, feel free to bring it up now.
Yeah, the final thing I'll add is I did put out there in chat the evaluation for today. You know, feedback is a gift. We want to keep getting this better. And within the evaluation, there is the opportunity for you to name a area that you're interested in and what role you'd like to have in it. So if you just want to stay informed and the group can let you know how things are going, or you can join more formally and be a part of a group that's going to do a deeper dive. Just name some of that in the evaluation. And I know Lyndon and Anne have both put their emails out there if you were part of their conversations. And I know we didn't have everyone report out, but I think people are beginning to get the idea here of it's going to be a group of people that forms a little bit of a team or a community, and you get to go deeper in this context. And what I've found going through it is relationships grow. You get to meet some really cool people. During last year, during COVID, we were able to actually have a real nice support structure while so many educators were going through things in a different space. So there's that benefit. Let me see, I got a direct message. I got a message saying I need permission to view the evaluation form. Well, that's not what we're supposed to have here. So I'll work on that, Joe, and I'll put that out there. So Faith, back to you.
That's everything. So we just really appreciate you guys joining us, you all joining us today, and feel free to always reach out if you have questions. We really look forward to partnering with all of you and just being able to be part of this journey of our next batch of leadership labs. Any final questions? Feel free to speak up, and we'll hang out here for a couple more minutes. But again, just thank you so much for joining today.
Great, and I'll look into the evaluation. I'll put it back out there again with a shortened URL, and I know Poe also just said she might help me with something that I'm clearly doing wrong, and we'll send that out in an email afterwards, so you'll have another opportunity to see it and look for it and respond. But thank you all so much. We'll be around on here for about another minute. Let me know if there's any other questions, and just as a reminder, you know, we are a nonprofit 501c3. We exist to really support you. And in order to sustain ourselves, membership fees and donations, sponsorships are all a part of the way we do that. So if you ever feel interested or called to support or make a donation, we would welcome that. And just thank you for being a part of our community and process today. Looking forward to staying connected and advancing some of this important work so that we can share it with others. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you all. And we'll be here if anyone has any more questions.